Hello everybody and welcome to another week of remote learning. So this is week 12, believe it or not, of our remote learning. So this is work starting from Tuesday the 30th of June and this week we're going to be looking at conservatism, and hopefully the good news for you all is it's mainly going to be focused around the videos that I've made on conservatism and looking at those. So the first one of these videos we're going to look at is on conservatism and human nature. There's a very gloomy view put forward by Hobbes that I want you to look at, and look at what negative things he says about humanity, which is quite a lot, and then a little bit that he says where he gives humanity a little bit of credit. The video then goes on and it looks at Burke, and you're looking at Burke's view on humanity, which is skeptical but not quite as negative as that put by Hobbes. And you look at how they differ, and then also how Burke differs from liberalism, because Burke really is kind of your founding father really of conservatism, and how we differentiate the two of them. It then moves on to one nation conservatism and how they view human nature. And again, you're looking at these trends running through. So how is the one nation view, how is that different or similar to the views of Hobbes and Burke? And then we move on to a kind of the newest form of conservatism, the new right, and how they feel about human nature. And there's a bit of a debate in this of whether they fit more actually with the liberal traditions in terms of human nature than the conservative ones. But I want you to think about, well, what common threads have you had going through all of this in terms of conservatism, and also think about, in terms of this very kind of basic level, in terms of just views on humanity, are you in tune with conservative thinking, or are you not? And which of the different conservative versions of human nature that are being presented are you most inclined to agree with, if agree with at all? The next video looks at conservatism and society. And there's some really interesting stuff in here. So, for example, we look at the idea of localism and its importance in conservatism, and the new right differs on the ideas of society to the rest of conservatism when it comes to this, and most issues really on society. The new right is a bit different. I then go on and talk about an idea of organic society, that a society is like a plant that grows, and how that adjusts, or that's how conservatives see it, and that adjusts how they think it should be managed, and there's a degree to which they believe it can be managed, to be honest. Then you're looking at the impact this has on their attitudes in general. We look at empiricism and what that is in terms of looking at an evidence approach to looking at society. And one of the big differences with conservatism is from socialism or liberalism is it doesn't have that ideal that it's aiming for, and is quite scathing of liberals and socialists for having this idea that you can create a utopian, a perfect society, which the conservatives just don't see as being possible. Tradition is an important part of conservative views on society, and there's a bit in there looking at that. They also defend the idea of a hierarchy in society and ideas of inequality. There's a very strong line in conservatism of kind of Judeo-Christian morals, and I want you to look at that. And also a real cornerstone of conservative ideology and their views on society is to do with property and the property owning classes. And then to finalise, I want you to think about how essentially conservatives differ or have similar views on society based on what you've seen in that video. The next video looks at conservatism and the economy, and again we see some common threads going back to the bit we've seen on society. So again, we've got this conservative belief in inequality, and this makes them quite different from the other ideologies, socialism and liberalism, both of whom look to do something about inequality where they see it rather than embrace it, that the conservatives do. You'll see that there are forms of conservatism that embrace laissez-faire, free market economics, and there are brands of conservatism that don't, which has led to these forms of conservatism being seen as reluctant supporters of capitalism. And I want you to look at why they're seen in that way and why they are reluctant to fully support capitalism. And then I've got some bigger questions I think is worth asking and thinking about it. So with one nation conservatism, we see this embracing of the post-war consensus in the years 45 to 79. So in that we see an embracing of a quite extensive welfare state and even state-owned industry. So economically, can we actually categorize these post-World War II conservative governments as being really conservative? The new right, again, is the other extreme end of this in terms of ideas on capitalism and economics in conservatism. And is the new right, is it just liberal economics? Are they not really conservative economically at all? They are neoliberal. They are classical liberal. They're just liberal in terms of their attitudes to the economy, and therefore placing them in conservatism isn't quite right. And the final one is, I think, is a really interesting thing to think about in terms of conservative attitudes when it comes to the economy. So liberalism, when it comes to economics, has got free markets, and it's got this idea of opportunity and equality of opportunity. So they are the cornerstones economically of liberalism and the economy. Socialism has equality and collectivism. So they are the cornerstones of socialist economic policy, and you'd see things like extensive welfare states and state ownership and redistribution of wealth, common ownership, people working together. What do you have as anything you can put in essentially to conservatism, or is it the case that conservatism doesn't really have an economic ideology? Because we can find some stuff with one nation conservatism that looks like modern liberalism, or even arguably like social democracy, or we look at the new right and we go back to Burke and we look at it and go, well, that's classical liberalism, that's neoliberalism. So is there something distinctively conservative about attitudes to the economy? Do they have a given ideology on it? So the next video goes on to conservatism and the state. Apologies for the sound quality on that one. I'm not sure what was going on. That was one of the reasons why I bought a new mic, that video. So be careful if you're wearing it, listening to it loudly with headphones. So we look at the idea of authority and conservatism and why it's so important, and the kind of policy that leads conservative governments to doing. Again, like we've got an organic society, you've got the idea of an organic state, and that poses different issues, really, if you look at it in the US and the UK, where the UK has got an organic state and the US doesn't. So therefore, what it means to be conservative in the US in terms of attitudes to the state is different in terms of what it means to be conservative in the UK in regarding the state. We look at why conservatives support the idea of a ruling elite, and then also conservative ideas on how that ruling elite should act. We then go on and look at the nation state, and you need to be able to explain what that is, and why attitudes to that nation state differ in the UK and the US to how they are perceived in by European conservatives, notably in Germany and Italy. And then quite a challenging one at the end of this is how the new right think about the state, and particularly when you bring in to Rand and Novick, you've got some really quite challenging ideas in terms of the state and its existence, and the kind of state it should be from new right thinkers. So again, an interesting blend of different attitudes to the state which are found within conservatism. And then the final task for this week, and the final video for this week, is looking at the different types of conservatism. It's a slightly longer video, this one. And what I want to do is rather than filling in and answering loads of questions, and so for the task 1 to 4, there'll be a Word document that I'll send out to you, which has got the questions. So it's basically the questions that are on the previous slides with a few more added in, and essentially you're going down, you're watching the video, pausing it, rewinding it, all those kind of stuff, and answering the questions, and hopefully that will guide your learning from the videos, give it a bit of structure, and so you can come out and go, right, I now know about about those different ones. With those videos, and with this one actually, what I suggest you do is you watch it all the way through once, and then you go back and you watch it and you pause it and you write down your answer, and you watch a bit more and you pause it and you write down your answer, and that I think will be the best way of doing it. With this one, again, taking away the scaffold really and giving you your opportunity of how you want to do it. I want you to present it as a diagram. I want you to cover traditional conservatism, one nation conservatism, Christian democracy, which is a European form really of conservatism, and then the new right, which is the kind of US UK version of modern conservatism. And what I want you to do is I want you to have essentially a summary of the different standpoints and how. And I want you to show on it, and you can do this through various methods. You can have kind of Venn diagrams, all kinds of different things. I want you to try and be creative with it, where you can show where they have elements in common and where they have elements that differ. Now, all these different videos this week should give you a really good grounding on conservatism, because remember, the different question types you're likely to get are either going to ask you about one of those 4 strands, so human nature, society, economics and state, and how much conservatives are consistent or inconsistent in terms of their attitude to those. And it's always going to ask you about the differences between the different strands of conservatism, part of which will come through videos 1 to 4, but also will be in this video that you look at for task 5 as well in more detail. And the only bit that will therefore be missing for conservatism, which we'll go through in more detail next week, will be the key thinkers. The video is there already if you want to look at it, but we will be doing tasks and activities on key thinkers next week. So, as I've said, looking at conservatism in more detail next week, and we will be looking at the final video, looking back on some of these videos, and also I'll be giving you other ways of looking at it, so some Word documents, PowerPoints, things like that, so you've got a different way of learning, just to reinforce and go back over the stuff that we've done this week. I'll also be talking to you about nationalism, and there will be work over the summer on nationalism. There will be a series of videos coming out on nationalism which will follow the same format as the liberalism, the socialism and the conservative ones, with the basic video, then the human nature, society, economics, state, different strands and key thinkers. So those videos will be coming out over the summer. And what I'm hoping is that through the summer you'll have watched all those different ones, and I'll talk about that in more detail next week. I might even have produced one or two of them by then, hopefully, if I've got enough time. Again, you'll have had an invite, or you've possibly had an invite for this week coming, to come in and see me Monday or Tuesday in terms of having a lesson with me. If you haven't, and unless you're sheltering or for other reasons can't come in, then you should get an invite from me for the final week. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks I will get to see all of you, if I haven't seen you already. And if I have seen you already, it might well be, if I've got space, that I get to see you again. Right. I'll also try and do an online support session, and just again to give people a chance to ask questions, and please do ask questions in those. It's quite a surreal experience doing those, because it feels not a lot different to doing this, that I largely feel that I'm talking to myself. Right, so I hope this has been helpful. Hope you enjoy this week's work. Make sure you're watching those videos nice and carefully, and I'll see you all in college over the next couple of weeks. Right, look forward to seeing you all. Speak to you again soon.